I would ask administration, or maybe the clerks who control the PowerPoint. You had a slide there that showed kind of the current ethos of traffic engineering and then where we're trying to go. Can you pull that up, please? Or just keep going back and I'll say when to stop.
I think I've gone too far.
There. Yeah. That one. So this seems to be the most important part. So the traditional approach, and correct me if I'm wrong, if we're thinking about the people who plan our streets, the traffic engineers, the predominant idea here is that there's collateral damage and we just accept it. People will die on our roads. And then what and this is what I'm asking to be clear, Vision Zero is, no, it's not acceptable. Zero is the vision, much like our WCB commitment with Mission Zero, which is, no, we don't accept anyone dying on the job. And that means there's a culture shift in our organization as well as in the community. Would that be a fair assessment of big picture what we're trying to achieve here?
Through you, the chair, that's correct.
Okay. I'd like to know, like internally, I'm seeing a massive shift. So before it seemed to be, so long as the traffic's flowing, I earn my 77 seconds, you know, someone gets hit, we'll live with it. What is changing internally? I'm seeing a change, but I wonder if you can comment. What triggered the thoughts of senior leaders and rank and file folks in the city to say, we need to really reflect, change how we make decisions on this file as well as how the community thinks about it? What triggered that?
Through the chair, I'll ask the team to provide the background of Vision Zero and how we got to this point, because it is a big change.
Through the chair, I think there were numerous factors, obviously, that went into that. But to identify some major factors, I think it was feedback from our residents. Obviously, whether it's city administration or whether it's RPS, we have to handle the requests that come in when people have lost a loved one. And it was challenging to try and tell people to their face that that was an inevitable outcome of a transportation system that moves vehicles efficiently. And when we look at other jurisdictions, we see that they've been successful in actually bringing those down. And so looking at what's been successful and wanting to replicate that here so that we don't have to continue to have those conversations with residents.
Thank you. Yeah.
And through the chair, I would say the team there, their passion and their education of the senior leadership team, we have said out loud that as administration, our recommendations will be based on prioritizing safety first, based on data and a successful program. And so I think, you know, it's always council's decision to decide which way to go. Internally, there was a conscious decision based on the work done by the team for the senior leadership group to say we will prioritize safety first, knowing that there's always some resistance to these measures.
Thank you. Not infrequently when we have this conversation, whether it's in school zones or elsewhere, the traffic deaths are inevitable constituency comes out, and that's my worry. Is that's the public opinion that hasn't been heard yet, and I don't need to hear it anymore. It's the blame of the cyclist and the pedestrian. When I'm going through your data, I'm seeing something else. So, and this would be a question for administration, but also Sergeant Gordon. In incidents involving pedestrians and cyclists, we know based on the data that you're likely just going to die, right? So if you're getting involved in an accident, you're probably dead. Who is to blame in these cases? Is it the casual person walking out, or is there something else going on that we can attribute to the driving patterns and the motorists themselves?
Through the chair, I'll start with that. So the mindset that we're trying to shift under Vision Zero clearly says that humans make mistakes, And so when they make mistakes, we don't want that to be a fatality. And so the comment about being hit by a vehicle means you're going to die at 50 kilometers or higher, yes, that's what it means. If you reduce that, then there's a chance of survival. So that's the shift that we're trying to make. And then I just ask RPS to provide some details if they have any more information.
Thank you. Sergeant Gordon, if you could.
Yes, thank you through the chair. I have been an impaired driving specialist investigator for pretty much the entire 23 years of my career and a drug recognition expert. And we teach in those courses about all the things it takes, all the multitasking that needs to happen when we operate vehicles, from observing other vehicles to pedestrians to just sitting in the vehicle. Do I need headlights on, signal lights, is the temperature right, seat right, mirrors right, just everything that we do instinctively. And I think part of what we're seeing in society today is everyone is so busy that there are outside factors that are adding into that are distracting from the already very busy task of driving. So things like not stopping at that red light before you make that right turn, and all of a sudden a cyclist is going in front of you, but you're busy looking to the left to clear traffic and not looking for a pedestrian to the right. And so, in my opinion, any time that we can slow down the weight or the speed of a vehicle, we increase the chance of any collision involving another vehicle, involving a pedestrian, involving a cyclist, involving an e-scooter. As soon as we can slow that vehicle down, we increase dramatically the likelihood of survival, and honestly the likelihood of very minor injuries being the only thing the pedestrian suffers. That goes through through the roof, essentially. We look at school zones. The slower the vehicle goes, the more time they have to react, and the more time that they have to even decrease that speed that much more by hitting the brakes. And by the time they actually make contact, if they've had a chance to apply the brakes, it most likely is going to lead to a very, very minor collision. And so that would be, I guess, my best answer to your question of there's all sorts of things with cell phones and everything that's going on right now in our driving population that we're trying to target enforcement and trying to have people make those smart decisions, but yet to protect, like you said, the innocent pedestrian just walking across on the red light. I think initiatives like this are very important in giving them the best chance of survival and hopefully very minor injuries, but also giving that driver, although they're making an error of, say, using their phone in that moment, we're still giving them the opportunity that maybe at that slower speed they're not going to cause a death, and they maybe will be able to reduce that speed enough that there's not going to be serious injury. And then we'll deal with the infractions as they come as a result of the investigation, but at least that pedestrian, cyclist, person in the wheelchair, whatever the case may be, at least their safety is hopefully the priority, and the risk to their themselves is hopefully lessened. Again, if that answered your question.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to flip this around. So all of the evidence, all of it, from Sweden to the United States to Canada, tells us that this framework and its function works to reduce injuries and fatalities. Is there any evidence whatsoever in any of the jurisdictions where these initiatives have been raised where there's a negative? Businesses shutting down, people just, God forbid, getting out of their cars and maybe biking, walking instead. Like, what are the negatives, anything, that we can attribute to this policy framework and a special zone with 30 kilometers an hour?
Through the chair, I'm not aware of any negative feedback that we've received or that has been received through Vision Zero framework implementation, but I'll ask the team if they've got anything that they've heard of, or is there something that we should discuss?
So through the chair, I'll start and then maybe I'll ask if SEMA can give a broader picture of other jurisdictions that they've worked within. But from our cursory understanding, there's no data that indicates that the shift to this movement has any negative impact to other societal things, but certainly it is controversial when it goes there. And so certainly you can find concerns and worries, whether there's been studies to be done that when it says there was a slight reduction in parking, whether that really did impact the business. I don't know that that data is there to support that, but it's certainly a valid concern that is raised in many jurisdictions when we talk about this. And I'll just ask if SEMA has any broader lens that they can add to that.
Thank you. So through the chair, we haven't seen any negative impact of implementing and adopting Vision Zero across the country. We have been doing that for the past 15 years for most of the jurisdictions in Canada. There's always, as was discussed, there's always going to be controversy that safety is going to be in contradiction with the flow of the traffic. But that's not why we are here. We want to make sure the road users are not getting exposed to serious collisions and unfortunate fatalities. So flow of the traffic would always be something that comes to mind. Some of these countermeasures, you might say that it will have a negative impact on the operation of your traffic signals or the general movement of the traffic. But again, the ultimate goal here is to improve the safety for all road users. And even the leaders in this area, Sweden and Netherlands, they have started about 30 years ago. They haven't even reached the zero by the definition of the zero fatalities, but they're getting there. They are getting very close to making the fatalities almost disappear from the roadway network. So I think it speaks to the fact that it will work. The only downfall would be, and I think this is something that we discussed throughout the development of the framework, that we need to set out realistic expectations. And we put a goal which is feasible by implementing the countermeasures of minimum 10% reduction in your fatalities and serious injuries. If you set yourself about 30%, and you won't achieve it, then it will have a public backslash, and people will start asking questions about the whole process. And I think we kind of stay away from that and make sure what we set out to do for the city is something realistic and doable. And as you progress in the next iteration of the program, once this program came full circle after 5 years, then you can reassess where you are right now in terms of the goals and objectives, and then maybe for the next round you can have a little bit more aggressive targets and goals. But that's the only thing that comes to mind, and I think we stayed away from that fact.
Okay, thank you. Just so everyone knows, Amber's keeping me honest with my time here. I'm not self-regulating. I have no interest in referring this. Man, I'll take 1,000 angry calls because someone has to go 30 rather than taking calls about people dying.